semdol ka ke mo fa seda.
Hello, future capsuleers, and welcome to Talking in Stations. This is Fish, and today we're going to be discussing why you should consider joining the EVE community. Now, while I'm fairly new to the community, those of you who know me know that a few years ago, I played a mobile game called Nova Empire that changed my life. When I started that game, I didn't expect to become so invested. I actually started the game because I wanted to kill my boyfriend, because I was wondering what he was spending so much time on. But as I became more engrossed and invested into the game, I realized all of these incredible skill sets that I had learned, which I didn't think were possible in this MMORPG strategy game. Unfortunately, our community was shattered because our beloved game became so grossly monetized by a development company that did not fix clear issues and bugs in the game, communicate in a meaningful way with their community, and place player experience before profit. Well, luckily, when one door closes, another opens. And that's when I discovered another incredible gaming community backed by a development company that's been around for over 17 years. Check it out.
Okay, what we're gonna do, guys, is we're gonna sit 10K off a target, we're gonna blap it really quick, and then we're gonna warp to the run spot. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Outstanding. Okay, stand by.
So hey guys, here's the deal. They got their prophecy fleet up, and then Razor also has an oracle fleet. So we should have some interesting stuff about to happen.
So it's going to be like this. We're going to portal through, and at the same time, the triage carriers are going to jump. Just the triage carriers at first. Everyone clear?
Let me see. Oh crap. I think... Will we be able to take on Guardians?
Yeah, they got 4 Guardians. I don't think we should do this.
we can do this.
Don't worry about that.
Now we're gonna fucking play some fun games.
My heart's racing.
Fun, relax. All wings align. Primary is the Dominics in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Now, if that doesn't give you chills, I don't know what will. EVE has won countless awards, and it's even been featured in the Guinness Book of World Records for having some of the largest battles in gaming history. Now, if you're not a PC gamer, have no fear. A few years ago, CCP Games and NetEase joined forces to create the mobile version of EVE, known as EVE Echoes, which is set to release in the mid-August 2020. As one of our well-known content creators, Captain Benzi, has to say, the hype train is full steam ahead.
Echoes is due to be released this August, like 3 months away.
And the Yangjung are not playable as a faction. The Yangjung are only ships and modules. You can only play as their ships and modules.
Now, we saw that there are 2 tiers of the Omega clone, the basic tier at 170 plex and the standard tier at 420 plex. That's about $5 a month for the basic and $15 a month for the standard. All content is unlocked on basic Omega. If your subscription runs out, for example, in the case of EVE Echoes, we can see here that skill training drops back down to 30 skill points per minute. Tech level is limited to tier 7. Advanced skills are locked, advanced ship activation is locked, and advanced modules are locked. Industry and selling items on the market are also locked too. Think of Echoes as a subscription game like, say, World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, but you can still play if you can't pay, and you can earn your game time. I can actually earn that subscription with in-game money. You can buy Plex with real-world money, or you can buy Plex with ISK, the in-game earned currency.
You really have to admire that music Sovereign RPG throws in there while he talks about those new factions. I feel like I'm being serenaded to about Echoes in an elevator.
The Yangjung are only ships and modules. You can only play as their ships and modules. Their ships and modules. Their ships and modules. Their ships and modules.
Ships and modules. Now, in all honesty, one of the first questions that new EVE players ask is, what race should I be? Now, really, your race is only going to determine where you're placed in the game, but it's not going to limit what teams you can join, and it's not going to limit what ships you can fly. So feel free to choose whichever race you like, and don't be too concerned on whether you're not going to be able to play with your friends. There is also one extra update regarding the Alpha and Omega subscription. Industry has recently been unlocked for Alpha players, and there are a few other updates with their subscription model. Again, these are very, very invested developers in the community, so they are constantly making changes. Now, on another note, when I began to dig further, I realized I wasn't the only one who had learned these extensive skills from a space MMO. I had a chance to interview Pandora Singularity, an epic player of EVE, to ask what she learned about in EVE Online and how this trauma nurse applied the things she learned in game IRL. Hi guys, welcome. And we are going to be featuring one of our epic players of EVE. Ivy, please introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Ivy, better known in-game as Pandora Singularity from 6th Empire. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing today?
You know, same old, different day in the life of Pandora.
And awesome. So tell us a little bit about how long you've played EVE and what kind of got you interested.
So I've been playing since about 2015. My ex-husband played at the time, and I liked going on comms and shit-talking his members. I'm not gonna lie, it's what I like doing. So his CEO kind of kept asking me, you should play, you should play, you should play. And I'm like, He's like, I have a task for you. You should be a spy and go spy on these other people. And I'm like, we're space friends. So I did it. But then I discovered that I make friends everywhere I go. And it's hard being a spy when you want to be friends with the people you're supposed to be gathering intel on. And then from there, I moved into a wormhole. Lived in a wormhole for about 2 years. And it's a lonely life in a wormhole by yourself. And then from there I went to nullsec, and I'm kind of everywhere. Like, I can't say that I'm a nullsec person. I can't say that I'm a wormhole or a low sec or a high. Like, I have tunes now everywhere, and I enjoy all varieties of the game playstyle.
Awesome. So tell me, in the perspective, imagine that someone is completely new, who's never played EVE. What exactly does it mean to be a spy in a team? And when you say you made all these friends and it was hard to gather intel, what does that mean? How deep does that go?
So the meta game components of EVE is definitely one of those things where we've seen people join an alliance, and you talk to this person every single day for like 2, 3, 4 years, and suddenly all of your assets are being transferred to the enemy, and you're like, oh my god. And this person that you thought was like your really good friend was somebody who was just sitting in the background and being like, this enemy team has a fleet at this time and they're going to be doing this, and they're just relaying it to the bad guys, and you get screwed in the end. So
I mean, how does that translate to life? I mean, getting screwed over in a game, that doesn't necessarily sound like fun. So how does that translate in life, and why do people let themselves be subjected to something like that? What makes that interesting?
I think for some people, the component piece of it is it's something that you can't, quote unquote, get away with in real life. And then in this game, like, you can be as nasty and as mean as your little black heart desires, and there's no real repercussions for it. And then there's people like me where I wear my heart on my sleeve and I feel bad, and I'm like, I can't do this to people. These are my friends. No. And then I don't. So
that's interesting.
It is what it is.
That's interesting. I think there is definitely one thing that a lot of people don't understand about the world of EVE is that you can really become anything you want, whether that's good or evil.
Bad.
It's up to you. But sometimes it's fun to play the villain. I mean, so you didn't enjoy playing the villain. You didn't like the role of the spy, but I've definitely had my fair share of spy encounters, or I had spies on my team. And I find that I'm on the same wavelength as you. It's really hard for me to pretend and, slither in the background gathering intel. It's not necessarily my role play, but that's an interesting point to be able to understand. You can choose both sides. So you gravitated towards the good side of the role play. Can you tell me like a fun experience you've had in your team, or just a memorable point where you thought to yourself, wow, this game is real. This is beyond just a game.
So I like using my wormhole experience as a fun story because I started out in high sec. Everybody starts out in high sec. And I got my little mining ship and I mine. Because I didn't want to do mining because I find it boring. But I
actually like the mining.
I run an industry heavy corp and I build Titans and Supers. People are like, oh, you must love mining. I'm like, I fucking hate mining. Like, I don't like doing it. So I make other people do it for me. And then I pay them, and then I do what I like doing. But I wanted to get into exploration. I wanted to get into the Astero. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, the Astero. Like, this is a ship I'm really interested in. I can fly around, and I can search for things, and I can do what I want to do. So I mined my little heart out and did what I wanted to do, and got my Astero, and I was like, yes, I got an Astero. I have no ISK to my name because this 100 mil ship cost me everything. I flew into my very first wormhole, and I kid you not, I owned this ship for all of 5 minutes. And then I got exploded. And I was mad. I was so mad. I was like raging. I was like, threw my headset. Like, I had the full like salty gamer meltdown.
How long did it take for you to make this ship in like real time?
In like 2 weeks of mining to get this damn ship.
Oh my god.
So I convoed Buddy, and I'm like keyboard warrior. I'm like, what the hell? I'm a new player. Blah 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 blah. He's like, oh, you're new? I'm like, get on my TeamSpeak so I can yell at you. He logged onto my TeamSpeak. So I'm like chewing this guy out. He's like, oh, do you want to come live in my wormhole with me? I'll get you a new ship. And I'm like, okay. So suddenly now I'm living in the wormhole with the guy who blew me up. And it was that social piece of component of Eve of like, this guy had, like, he didn't have to invite me in to live in his wormhole. He didn't have to help me. He could have just been like, hey, yo, I blew you up. Get over it. Like, get good, scrub. But he's like, no, let me teach you how to wormhole. And it was that initial social component piece of Eve of like another player being a decent human being that really just, I was like, okay, I kind of like this game again. And
it went to enemy to friend like really quickly. Like things just changed. Do you think they still change as much now that like you've been in this world for a lot longer and now you're clearly established? So how's that changed from when you first came in? And have you killed a noob and have you been the guy on the other end?
Maybe. But now with skill injectors though, you can't really tell if a 1-day-old character is actually a newbie. So if I do manage to kill somebody who's like really like 4 or 5 days old, I'll usually send them the money for their like ship replacement. Like, hey, your ship was worth 80 mil. Like, here's 80 mil. Actually, here's 500 mil. Go have fun.
You pay them back?
I do.
You're like, you've learned your lesson. Hopefully, here's your money back. Don't make the same mistake twice.
But again, with skill injectors now in the game, it's like you can't tell if a new player is actually a new player. And I'm not gonna go hunt in high sec. Like that's just like shooting fish in a barrel. So
that's just evil. So okay, you've been in Eve. Did you ever play any other games before that? Like how long have you been a gamer? Would you identify as a gamer?
I would definitely label myself as a gamer. I've been playing video games since I was, knee-high to a grasshopper. Like Nintendo systems when they first came out, and then, N64, and then at the beginning of high school, I migrated more towards PC games. My very first job was at a computer repair shop, and we had a quote-unquote battle hub. And he had all these computers set up, and you could play basically whatever game you wanted. So there was a lot of like Unreal Tournament, Counter-Strike. We did WoW for a bit there, and it basically was whatever the flavor of the week is. Like so now, again, I've gotten into Eve, and I've been a huge League of Legends player. Like I freaking love League of Legends. I'm really bad at it, but I love it. I'm like pew 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 pew. But it is what it is.
Sometimes you don't have to be great at the game. You just have to have a good attitude and it'll work itself out.
I just warn people, hey, you're playing with me. I really, really suck. So if you're super serious about this game, I am not the person to be on your team right now.
That's fun. Sometimes those create the fun experiences. People have to protect you at all costs, and it ends up becoming a challenge for them. So, okay, you played all these other games. How would you say Eve relates, and how is it different?
Eve is completely different from these other games. Like you've got Counter-Strike and League of Legends. They're basically first-person shooters. You're trying to shoot other people and win your match. Whereas Eve is like this never-ending, revolving door of you can basically do whatever you want in this game. Whereas the other games are you have a task, you want to win the match. Whereas Eve, it's you can't really win the match because okay, yes, you won the timer on the Forza, but what's to stop these people from coming back and doing it all over again once the fort repairs itself? So comparing what I've done in the past historically to Eve is you can't compare apples to oranges.
Okay, interesting. So this is beyond a game. This is because I know I personally, from just being super new in the community, I consider these types of games more of like a lifestyle, a hobby, something that you really dedicate yourself to. And I do also think there is some benefits that come with these games. So like in terms of benefits, I mean, for your work in real life, like has there ever been any kind of overlap where you had this experience in the game and then in your real life you applied what you learned?
So funny you should mention that. I am a trauma nurse, and I am blunt and to the point. Sometimes to the point where it may have gotten me in a little bit of hot water at work because I'll say something and then I'm like, I should have worded that better. So after I got into Eve, I started hanging out with a couple of people and watching the whole diplomatic approach of how people were talking to one another. And I took that component back to my real life job. And again, now I'm the person they send in, hey, we have a problem with room 4. They're throwing things. Can you go talk to them? And I'll be like, okay, off I go. And again, I feel that my crucial conversation skills that I have used as Diplo level 5 in Eve are definitely paying off in my real life job also now.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, I think a lot of people have these stories about how the game's translated, but I don't think these stories get shared often enough. I mean, we talk about like leadership and teamwork, and for you, it sounds like fervent communication. I mean, being able to take that skills is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to almost measure. Like, how do you measure this experience you had in this game? And then how does that affect you in real life? And especially being a trauma nurse, I can imagine that would be very, very chaotic, very stressful.
It's organized chaos. That's how I describe it. Organized chaos.
And do you think the skills that you have as a nurse have also translated in the game, like being able to handle lots of chaotic things? You know, do you feel like that's affected your gameplay in any way?
I think it's definitely helped me because again, when you're a nurse, you're in these type of scenarios, you're seeing people at their worst. Like you name it, I've been probably called it. My nursing experiences, we had this guy. He was mean, like he was just downright nasty, and he threw bedpans. He threw his own feces, like he was just nasty. So it was nurse 1 had gone in, left, nurse 2 had gone in, left. They're like, Ivy, it's your turn, like you need to go in and deal with this guy. So we call it duck and dodge with him because you knew you had to dodge or duck the moment you went into this room because something was coming at your head. So I walk into the room and I'm like, hi, Mr. So-and-so. Woof, there goes the bedpan. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, you stunned cunt. And without missing a beat, I'm like, oh, have you been talking to my ex-husband again? And he just broke out in this big ass grin. He's like, I like you. And I'm like, why are you throwing things? Like, come on. And then we had a conversation and he was better after that. But somebody needed to kind of play on his level of just, look, stop being a dick. Like, I'm going to talk straight to you. I'm going to talk blunt to you. Like, let's just, and that's kind of how you have to be an Eve. Like, sometimes you can use all the pretty flowered words. You can do the Diplo dance. You can, coyly work your way around a subject. And then there's people like me where it's like, listen, you're being an ass. you need to stop. Like, what do we need to do to make this stop? Like, come on. Like, it's just being honest and just talking to people at their level sometimes, and it's knowing when to do that and when not to. So
yeah, when to have those two sides. And I definitely think there is a high barrier to entry and entering in the world of Eve. It's not a community that's going to say, come hug us, we're going to just love you. And
have you seen the learning curve diagram? Like, somebody's like falling off the cliff and there's a bulldozer. Like, this is Eve. We are not nice.
Okay, so if I'm being honest here, the learning curve of Eve is often much higher than it is for other games. So just be aware, if you are coming into the game, I highly recommend you find a great team, and don't get discouraged if the first team you find isn't the right one for you. Sometimes it does, you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince in terms of the team. Find a good team culture and it'll be a much different experience. If you really still don't believe me about all the skills you can learn, let's just ask. Alexa, who has the best gaming community in the world?
The best gaming community is Eve. There is no community that surpasses the dedication and passion of the Eve community. When a person plays Eve, they learn leadership, strong communication, and other vital life skills.
Well, if she said it, it must be true. Still skeptical on how team-oriented the game really is and how dedicated the developers are to taking and accepting feedback from the community, it's time we discuss the CSM.
So CSM is the Council of Stellar Management, and basically the best way I can describe it to somebody who doesn't know what Eve is, because I had to describe it to my parents because they're like, why are you doing this? You already do so much in Eve. Like, you're always on the phone. I'm like, sorry. So basically the way I describe it to my parents is the Council of Stellar Management is our governing body of players who work with CCP staff to bring the best to our player base and bounce ideas. And the community is asking for this, and we Diplo. It's what the CSM essentially works out to be. Is if you say the CSMs are not Diplos, we're Diplos. Like, we have thousands of players presenting their concerns, and CCPs getting backlogged with just everybody yelling at them in 500 directions. And our job essentially is to take the ones that we're hearing the most, pick them out of like the thousands and be like, okay, these are what we're hearing. How can we try and help this? Or what can we do? So we're there essentially as a governing body, basically to act as in-game Diplos in real life also, to bring the best pieces of our community's suggestions back to CCP and saying, hey, we've noticed this problem. Hey, there's a bug here. Hey, this is severely impacting gameplay. How can we fix it? And that's my take on CSM in a nutshell.
It's like that extra layer of support, because I don't know about you, but in other games I've played, and I do kind of venture in mobile games, but then I've also had this experience in PC. I think customer support is really rocky with some gaming companies. But having that extra layer of support, because again, like you said, the developers can be backlogged sometimes. So how do we know which change or which update is the most important? And you're saying the CSM basically helps facilitate those. So it says, all right, we have thousands of votes that this is so critical. This is extremely important. We need to get this done. And you help organize that. So, I mean, that's a full-time job right there.
I think knowing also, again, how to balance things too, which is why my parents were like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? I am very community driven. I almost left Eve in 2016, and I managed to be convinced to go to FanFest in 2017. And once I went to FanFest, I met the Eve community in its true natural state. I don't know how else to describe it. And I fell in love. Like, I met Guard and Falcon, and I met Max Singularity and all the Sixth Empire peoples. That was the year that they did like the full role play event, and I love role playing, so I was hooked. And I went there basically by myself. I was with Darkness at the time, so I was part of a no block, but you're going there not really knowing anybody. So I knew all of like 2 people who just happened to be the 2 people I was rooming with in Iceland, but I didn't know anybody else, and it was time to just go out and explore and see where my Eve niche was. And again, I fell in with Sixth Empire. I started talking to them. I loved the role-playing community part of it. I loved the fact that they stood so strongly of like, our motto is, we are the Coast Guard of New Eden. If you need a home, if you need help, we will be here for you. And that resounded very strongly with me, even on a personal level, not just only being a nurse, that if you need help in game, whether it's you just need somebody to talk to, you need a home temporarily, like, we are here for you. So
the team portion was really
yeah.
important. So it's like you almost quit. You were enjoying the game, but it wasn't the experience. So I do think maybe it's important to point in the game that this has the potential to give these incredible experiences. But one of the biggest things I've noticed as a trend, even from what you're saying, is the team is vital. Finding your tribe, finding your crew, figuring out, who you're going to fly with. That's like crucial to being able to fully enjoy the Eve experience, so to speak.
And then after that fan fest, for me, I wanted to give back to the community. So just before the fan fest that year, I had gone to my very first Eve Toronto player meetup. And I always tell the story in interviews of, I had this guy at the time was Tim Mathos. He's like, hey, I need to help pitch Toronto to CCP. Like, we want to get them to Toronto. How can we do this as a community? So we're in Iceland now, fast forward, and I have Tim come up to me and he's like, yeah, I need you to help me talk about Toronto. And I'm like, I'm not prepared, but okay. Like, I can talk to anybody. I have no problems talking. I have verbal diarrhea some days. So I'm in the Harpa. I don't know if you've ever been in the Harpa. The Harpa is absolutely beautiful, glass windows everywhere. And we were in like the darkest, deepest corner of the Harpa, and this teeny tiny guy is standing there, and I have no clue who he is. All I know is that I need to talk to him. He's somebody from CCP, and I need to pitch Toronto. So I start talking to this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, like, blah, Toronto. This is why we need to do it, blah, 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 blah. I find out after the fact that I was talking with CCP guard. I'm like,
no big deal.
and who he ended up being I love Svenny. He's like near and dear to my heart. But like, I had no clue who this guy was. I was just like, blah. And then later on, he's on stage, and I'm like, holy shit.
Well, that's an interesting coincidence. So you got to tell him all about Toronto, and then what happened? So
then from there, Tim goes, hey, do you want to help me start running the meets? And I was like, yeah, okay. So then I started throwing myself into just the monthly meetups. And I said, Tim, like, there's so many things we need to change and do. And I know at first he was a little like, well, I don't want to change too much. And I'm like, no. Like, if I wasn't a nurse, I'd probably be an event planner because I like doing it. So I changed everything. I literally walked into Tim and went, okay, where's the keys to the car? And I pulled the rug out and I changed everything. And he's just poor guy sitting there being like, I've been running this for 8 years. And but I say, like, we went from having monthly meetups of having like 4 to 8 people to suddenly our Christmas dinner that year, we had 47 people show up. Like, wow. The influx of people suddenly showing up just from doing a venue change was astronomical. And then from there, it kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And that's sort of how Eve North evolved. And I said, Tim, we got to rebrand ourselves. We just can't be Toronto. We have to be all of Canada. We are not just one city. We are Toronto. We are Hamilton. We are London. We are Ottawa. We are New Brunswick, Vancouver. Like, we are, and I did that backwards, New Brunswick, Vancouver. Anyways, but we were evolving at such a rapid pace. I said, Tim, we need a team. We need this. We need this. So Tim, we're founders. We're going to build a team. And it's what we did. And here I am. And Tim helps too still. But I've got this core team of people who've dedicated to the same community-driven causes that I do. And again, I joke that I have cat herding level 5. And I'm good at saying, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. but it paid off in the end because I had CCP approach me in October, just before EVE Vegas last year, and they're saying, hey, we want to do the world tour and we want Toronto to be on it.
Now, to put this into perspective, Pandora Singularity was so invested in the community that she invested many hours into growing a small meetup that started with 7 people that has since grown into the EVE North it is today. This is not flowery language of someone who talks the talk. This is a person who takes decisive action, and there's many more like this in the community. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Alexa, we are turning off the station.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Alexa, we are turning off the station. Robots.
Goodbye, future capsuleers, and thank you for watching the show. Be sure to subscribe and follow Talking in Stations. Your donations help fund A-Fish.
Robots, what are you going to do? Be sure to tune in the next 2 weeks where we're going to have other special guests such as Lady Scarlet and January Valentine to discuss the real social connection that you can find in EVE and that others have found before them. If you are new and interested, we've got teams like OpForce already recruiting for EVE Echoes, which launches in the middle of August. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to add the TIS Discord in the links below and fly safe.
Over the edge, feel like I'm floating through the air. The pain I felt is paid for, all is said and done. Oh, I am restricted, fixed upon the web. I need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing in. Break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.